Well, certainly not the first time we've spoken, Dr. Sandoval. Of
Yeah.
St. Louis University, you are such a fascinating demographer of the region, and I've been following as new census data has been released. You've been um, writing about it and creating what I think are really cool, like mapping tools that folks can look at to see how the St. Louis region is impacted. But first, I want to, and thanks for coming on to talk about that. But first, I want to sort of expand our view because pretty sure that I read within the last week that the number of babies born in the United States is it at an all-time low or
It is. Yeah. So every year, the United States will probably be breaking records. The data coming out. So for 2025, that is a record low. And the data coming out for 2026 is even lower. The first few months of 2026, the provisional data that's out shows even fewer. And this is what we expected. We call this a demographic shock because in 2026, whenever you create an atmosphere of uncertainty and fear, rational people do not have children until you understand that my job is safe. There's not a recession coming. We're not at war. And so when we create this sense of fear, young people do the rational thing and not have children. We saw this in 2020 with COVID. We saw this in 2008 with the Great Recession. Anytime that there's uncertainty, young people um, will postpone births, and that's what we're seeing. This has started in November. We started to see the decline in births, and it's continued to go from November, December, January, February, and so this is what we're going to see.
so next year is going to be lower? And when you look at the state of Missouri, I've been saying this ad nauseum for years that our our K-12 school enrollment's declining and will decline because of that sort of peak in 2008, just before the Great Recession. So our biggest kindergarten class was like 2012, and our kindergarten classes have by and large declined ever since 2012. And so those kids are moving through the system. So you can project that we will just have fewer and fewer kids enrolled in our K-12 system in the state of Missouri.
Yeah, this is true, and we have a pretty good chart. We make these for every city. We're replacing very large cohorts of children who were born. I have a son who was born in 2007, just before the recession. That cohort that graduated in St. Louis was 40,000 students. The baby birth cohort is um, 27,000 students. So that's just in that 1 year, a 13,000 decline. And it's going to decline every year for the next 15 to 18 years because we don't know where the bottom is yet. It has not reached the bottom. And so
People will say, "Where are the kids going?" I'm like, "They're not going anywhere. They weren't born."
they weren't born.
Well, yeah, like the St. Louis region, like Clayton is declined and Ladue is, I mean, all of these school districts, I think almost everyone in the county has fewer kids today than they had 10 years ago.
Yes, and it's not just St. Louis County, St. Charles County is experiencing this. There are some parts that are growing in Wentzville area, um, O'Fallon. But if you look at the old St. Charles areas, they're experiencing decline. Families with children are declining in those areas. We had made a interactive map, I think that shocked a lot of people of seniors outnumbering youth.
I saw that.
And people could not comprehend this. They're like, oh my gosh, but yet this is not 2000 where youth were dominating these neighborhoods. And I live out here in Chesterfield. I'm like, the entire 64 corridor is senior citizens dominating the youth. In Chesterfield, people are shocked. I said, um, more seniors lived in Chesterfield than youth in 2010. And that's just only grown since 2010 to 20.
And your maps actually go down to the zip code, right?
Yeah, we go down to the neighborhood. This is happening throughout West County, across in Illinois. So um, the only way you can turn this around is young people from across the United States deciding that they want to make St. Louis their home. They want to have a family there. They want to create a business there. And this is what I promote. We have to get younger. We really should have a preferential option for families with children. And so I think that's a hard message for a lot of people because they're like, well, wait a minute, we grew from 1970 to 2020. I'm like, but all of that growth was driven by babies born. 1.8 million babies were born, over 1.8 million babies were born. And I tell people, just do the math, 27,000 babies per year times 50. That's the back of the envelope. That's what's coming over the next 50 years. Unfortunately, that's not what's going to come. It's going to be a lot lower than that. And so people are starting to get it. We're not going to have 1.8 million babies born over the next 50 years.
Yeah, and I think about things like individual school systems building new elementary schools when there's got to be a lot of buildings that are empty. And also, I think, won't there be more of a competition for like public resources between children and older people?
Yeah, I in my previous job at Northwestern, we did a project on this at one of the suburbs because we were studying seniors. And one of the suburbs, there was a debate about how to spend public money. Was it for transit for seniors or transit for the children? This was 2006, and this was debate was happening in Chicago. How do you provide paratransit for senior citizens when that number is increasing? So um, we're just having this discussion because St. Louis is leading. We're in the top three of regions. Pittsburgh leads the country, Cleveland second, and St. Louis is third, tied with Tampa. More people dying than babies born. And we just do not have, relative to our size, we're still a large region. Um, we simply don't have the number of babies born for the size of our population. And it's because we're a very old region. We're the ninth oldest region in the country.
Yeah, I mean, we used to have 800,000 people in the city of St. Louis, right? And now we're 280 or something. And it's
Yeah, and I was just looking at the numbers. I'm like, it is very possible within 2 years that Kansas City will have more babies born absolutely than the St. Louis metro region.
and
That's how
Springfield's kind
people
of coming up too, right? Like Springfield,
that,
I think is doing better
well,
than St. Louis.
no, I'm talking about the region.
Yeah.
The Indianapolis is about 700 babies behind St. Louis.
Wow.
Nashville is about 800 babies behind. So all of these small regions are having lots of babies, and
Because I
when
think
one of
families are moving there, to your point.
and but young people are moving
Yeah.
there, and so your future is depends on the number of children born. And so when you look at population projections, I kind of know what this looks like. When you fall below Kansas City in number of births, at some point Kansas City will be larger than St. Louis.
Yeah.
We can
Wow.
project this out. Um, and we're talking absolute births, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not talking birth rates, absolute births. And so this is something that the region have. We had lots of babies born 10 years ago. We were fine 10 years ago. Um, we and I don't. This is we go back and like we can talk about what happened since
Yeah, do. I
2010.
I'm curious, what did happen? Like, how did we get in I know you call it the death spiral when there's more deaths than births, but, like, how did we get into that?
We as a region, so I moved here for the Great Recession. I moved in
Okay.
2008 to start my job at Sloan, and and there was hope when I got here. There was like some positive momentum happening. I think the region took it for granted that it didn't have to do anything. Like we just have to be St. Louis. We don't have to do anything. Unfortunately, Nashville came on the scene. Then you started to see regions change. Regions like we need to get younger. St. Louis did nothing
Yeah.
since I lived here. They've done like we don't. There's been a lot of resistance
They're
to
doing, like,
economic
what kinda
development
things?
in
Like,
the
what has
region.
Nashville done?
Nashville was well, I think it was the popularity of being young, being pro development. I mean, I went to Nashville to actually look at them, like, why are young people there? And so I went to Vanderbilt and I saw this, at least walking around, this really interesting integration between the city and Vanderbilt University. I'm
Yeah,
like, that does not exist here in St. Louis. Like this
right.
making it a vibrant, cohesive urban experience.
Now you step off campus at SLU and you're in an area you don't want to walk at night, right?
Yeah, and that even with WashU, right? Even if there's any, and then you can talk about the loop, it never recovered from COVID. Traffic is down. And
In
so
the
I
trolley.
think the region has really struggled to attract young people to
Wonder what
stay here and live here.
Well, so we've been looking into the issue of crime in St. Louis quite a bit, and I know it's down and everyone's celebrating that fact, but I'm not sure when you survey people, how do you feel walking alone at night? That it's changed all that much, even if the number of murders are down. I don't know that people feel safer walking alone at night, and that's got to have an impact on whether you want to stay in St. Louis after you have kids.
Yeah, and I think in the city, I think when you move out to the suburbs, I think the challenge is like where can you live for affordability? So many suburbs are against new development, even though they can develop. We see this debates in Chesterfield, the debate in Creve Coeur, several debates out in St. Charles. Let alone don't even talk about Jefferson County because they're celebrating voting down housing. Um, so my point is, if you don't want to build housing, Indianapolis is going to build it. Columbus is going to build it. Nashville's building it. We're no longer in the top 50 in new housing permits in the region, in the country. We're 58.
Why though? I mean, is it because there's not demand, or is that supply reacting to demand, or is it supply being constrained? Which one do
Supply
you
is being constrained.
Okay.
And part of it is, and I speak to people, it's like, it's going to hurt my home values.
Mm.
People want supply down. But at the same time, like, but you understand that there's a consequence to this. And home values are always good in St. Louis. That like, but you look at again, we always say there's a city that we can look to. That's our future, and that's Pittsburgh. And if you really study Pittsburgh and look at it, you're like, wow, there's a lot of things that we can learn as a city, saying that this is not what we want to be. Pittsburgh leads the country um, in discounted rates on home sales.
Wow.
When people offer their price, most people do not get the price that they want. It's a significant discount because the demand's not there.
Hmm.
We are about 20 years behind Pittsburgh.
I think a lot in what I do about the educational offerings in the region and the fact that before we were recording, we were talking about Texas. Texas, number one, doesn't have an income tax. And also, you can pick your child's school from the get-go. They have hundreds, if not thousands, of charter schools. And now they have a private school choice program that I think 250,000 families apply to. And Missouri has extremely limited private school choice program, maybe 6 or 7,000 kids in the state, and not even the ability within the county of St. Louis to go outside of these tiny little districts. You can't even go from Clayton to Brentwood or Brentwood to like you can't even go outside of your tiny little district. So it requires people to and people really feel strongly about that, and they fight this idea that why we would open up the county and let kids go within the county to any school district. They fight it, and the legislature fights it every year, and I'm like, we are just becoming less and less competitive with
And I don't think what
incentives here.
people understand. I do a lot of work with schools now. We're going to lose at a minimum 100,000 children under 15 by 2045. This loss is built into the system on 27,000 births right now. And so the numbers are starting to show up in kindergarten. We have a smaller kindergarten class, smaller first grade class coming in. And so a lot of schools are like, wait a minute, what's going on? And like, this is just starting. You have another 20 years because we have these large cohorts that were still born after the Great Recession that are going to be replaced by smaller cohorts coming in. And there is no migration that's significant coming into the region of children.
So there's going to be difficult staffing decisions, and people don't want to hear it, right? Like we cannot continue to hire more teachers.
To close schools, you know, merge schools. I'm doing some discussion here in Parkway. I'm like, people should not be surprised Parkway is having these meetings this month about what does Parkway look in 2015. And people are discussing, like, we have to start talking about consolidation. Rockwood is talking about a 15% decline in 10 years. Go out another 10 years, Rockwood will be talking about school consolidation.
I see
St.
it
Charles will be talking about school consolidation on the old St. Charles, the city of St. Charles. This is coming. These discussions. So everybody focuses on the city, and the city needs to close schools. You will see a discussion, I think, between Clayton and Brentwood.
for sure. I mean, Clayton had 2,500 kids. Now they've got closer to 2,000. I mean, that's teachers, that's buildings. And I know in like Indianapolis, I talked to a superintendent in the Indianapolis area, and they can pick, you can pick a public school in the Indianapolis region. All parents can pick a public school. And he was like, I had some under-enrolled elementary schools, and it was great for me because I put a language immersion program in one to bring parents in. I mean, I don't think yet the resistance to this idea is all about, oh, we don't want kids who aren't paying property taxes. But I think it's going to flip. And they're going to be like, we got to fill these seats. We're paying the same teacher for 18 seats that we could pay for 22 kids. You know what I mean? Then at some point, they're going to have to start laying off teachers. So I think there are some very difficult decisions ahead that you can see now. And there are things that could be done now, like at least don't fill open positions. But I'm not sure that all the school systems in the region are.
I think universities are seeing this. I think universities are seeing because many of them are reliant on tuition, and those dollars are not coming in. And a smart university has to make these cuts because it doesn't get any better next year or the following year.
Yeah.
There will be fewer students coming in. So universities that want to survive are making necessary cuts to survive. Again, we don't know what the decline of births. We don't know what the bottom looks like. We just happen to live in a state and a region that has seen a significant decline in children. And so I keep saying, we're modeling the future for people, either a good or bad thing. They're like, we want to be like St. Louis, Missouri, or we don't want to do what they did.
Yeah.
And so, I think a lot of people are starting to understand this. It's like, we're letting our children go.
Yeah.
And we're not doing a very good job of trying to keep them here. When you have 1.8 million births, you had enough births to let children leave your region, to leave the state. You don't have that luxury anymore. If it's going to be, our models show the region it's anywhere between 1.3 million to 1 million births coming in over the next 50 years.
Mm.
And so we hope it's not 1 million births.
Yeah.
Because that means you have an 800,000 decline in your population under 50. Or it's 1.3 million births, which is only 500,000 decline. That's
How does immigration factor into it? Because I remember the last time we talked, you said that St. Louis is not very immigration friendly. And of course, the current national environment is not very immigration friendly. So,
it will not. Missouri and St. Louis cannot rely on immigration to save it. It's just it's not a state that's immigrants are going to come to in large numbers. They're going to go to Florida. They're going to Miami leads the country, even though domestic migration is people are leaving. International migrations are going there as that's their top destination. They're going to Philadelphia. They're going to New York. We get immigrants who come here. But it's a very small number. It's like 6,000 a year. We're not even in the top tier as a top 25 metropolitan region. So, and Missouri is not either. And so Missouri has to rely on domestic migration. The data will show probably the natural growth is 166. And it's for the decade, it has more people dying than babies born.
mm.
Missouri will start to have, from a natural perspective, more people dying than babies born. And so 100% of the whole state has about 91 counties have more people dying than babies born. So Missouri will become dependent for growth on domestic migration.
Or do we just accept that we're not going to grow anymore? What's the impact of that?
Again, it's going to be specific. So I do think like the Springfield area is going to grow, the Branson area, there's growth. Part of this is retirement, I think. Kansas City is growing.
Why Kansas City more than St. Louis, do you suppose? What's attracting younger people to Kansas City that is not
It's very young.
St. Louis?
Kansas City is a younger region. St. Louis is pretty old. I mean, when you look at the age structure, St. Louis is a fairly old region. Kansas City is a lot younger, and it has a, a large Latino population, and that's the largest growing population in the country.
Birth rate wise?
Well, just yeah, birth rate wise. And so Latinos actually are now the second largest population in Kansas City. They surpassed the Black population, which is, I think, even shocked to me because we knew this was coming, but we thought this was going to be post 2030. The fact that it already happened shows just how many Latinos are moving there. And then you have an exodus of Black residents leaving Kansas City as well as St. Louis. So, um, well, I always tell people when you have young Black families leave or young Black adults leave, those children ultimately leave too. And so that's part of the story. When young people leave, the children that traditionally were born to those, they're being born in Charlotte,
Yeah.
Atlanta, Houston. Um, so the number one challenge for St. Louis and the state is the decline in births. If you cannot, if that doesn't if that doesn't change, then you're going to see that decline ultimately will start to show up in 5, 10 years in our schools. And the private schools will simply go out of business because that's dictated by the private market. Or they'll do what many of the Catholic schools are doing, and they say we're going to have middle school now,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or we're going to be K through 12. And I'm like, that's a solution, but then what about the parochial schools? We're not there's no growth. They're just taking children out of other schools and putting them in your school system. And so again, I go back to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is how do we manage population decline? 'Cause I think most people in Pittsburgh, the city is growing a little bit. 100% of the growth is in the loss is in suburbs,
Okay.
and that's going to happen in St. Louis. When this loss starts to show up in the demographic accounting, most of the loss is going to be outside of St. Louis City.
Hmm.
It's going to be in Chesterfield areas. It's going to be in St. Charles.
Let's go back to like what could be done from a policy perspective. Chesterfield's trying to have this arts and entertainment district. They put in Top Golf and the concert venues. I mean, they're trying to attract younger people there. Is it working?
It's not working. I mean, they have the slight increase. Okay, I just posted this yesterday because I think people are shocked. They're like, the growth is non-family households in Chesterfield. Um, so if you look at and I encourage people to go there, the new development down I call it downtown west of Chesterfield. These are $1 million homes, very expensive. Um, very few families with kids are there.
Older people?
These are empty nesters or dual income, no kids, and so it's very expensive for young families to get into Chesterfield today.
Hmm.
When your entry home that was $170,000 in 1980 is $600,000 today.
Yeah.
It's very expensive, and so these are the challenges.
So to build more starter homes or
You need more entry level homes. I call not even I'm not even using the word affordable. I
yeah,
just talk you need attainable homes for
starter
two
homes. Yeah.
incomes, and they can be built. But what I've heard is that a lot of cities do not want these homes. They want these $600 to $700,000 homes because of taxes.
Yeah.
And so there is this tension there. It's a these amenities, these Parkway and Rockwood, they're going to look very different in 30 years today.
Yeah.
They were very attractive amenities for young families with children. Um, but I look at the data and my kids are in Parkway, and I'm like, these schools are under enrolled.
Yep.
I mean, you go if you objectively look at the school rooms and like there should be 30 kids in these rooms, and there's 15.
Yeah.
And so it's great for me as a parent. I'm like, I'm glad there's only 15 kids in from my fourth grader.
Yeah.
One of the classes in Parkway Central, there's 8 students in it
Wow.
in the middle school in his math class. I'm like, I love it
Yeah.
as a parent,
Lots of
but
one-on-one.
as somebody like this is not sustainable.
No. Yeah.
And there are lots of reasons why that happened, but I'm like, I mean, that's better than being in a private school, the student to teacher ratio.
Yeah. I just am trying to, figure out what would cause a renaissance in St. Louis. And again, it doesn't feel super safe. It has some great amenities, and great food scene and now MLS soccer, but what would it take for people to, well, number one, you do have the school system problem where the St. Louis public school system is kind of a dumpster fire. So people want to move out if they have small children. They want to move
Yeah,
out of the city.
the
But
student to move out's done in very it's made within the first 3 years once the baby's born.
yeah.
So we can see it in the data. Yeah, it is, in my opinion, when we moved from Chicago, because we lived in the city of Chicago, we wanted to live in the city of St. Louis. I think most people who move from Philadelphia or Boston are living in the city,
Hmm.
and so you think, like we thought, that St. Louis City would be offering the same amenities. Uh, because of the Great Recession, I came a year before my family, and we soon realized the city of St. Louis was not the city of Chicago in terms of amenities, and so we ended up in St. Charles. And I think most people make that same decision. And so the city and so we see it in the data. People are moving into the city from Philadelphia, from Boston, from Houston. Um, but then they like me, they ultimately, if you have children and you're not gonna pay private school to because that's a tax in many ways, many people view it as a tax, they're going to exit out. And then with the Catholic schools closing in the city,
Yeah.
there are gonna be fewer options. And so,
But the public
um
transportation is no good. I mean, there's
and
things.
it's interesting, I think we did see this experiment during COVID, and I did talk to people talk to me because, when COVID happened, the Catholic schools in the county opened up. And so a lot of families wanted their children in face-to-face instruction,
Yeah.
and so they left it they did not, stay in the city. Um, so we had kind of a quasi experimental design there, like, education was very important. And so I have talked about this. A lot of people left the city, because of that and
Yeah.
never came back. And that this started before COVID, um, but I think this idea of school choice is something where, um you can parents want it, that you we have
Absolutely.
enough anecdotal evidence that when Normandy closed, the school system closed, families moved to Normandy to get their kids to go to Francis Howell.
Yeah.
There's enough evidence to show that families wanna make these great decisions. I think the question would be, like, would Parkway accept all of the students that would wanna be in a Parkway school district,
Yeah. The
right?
the law would have to say that they would have to. Like you
Yeah.
couldn't let them pick and choose for sure.
And so I think that's the question. It's like you have a lot of people who would love to be in Parkway, but they're making these. I gave a talk in Marquette, and I was shocked because a good percentage of the students were St. Louis public school students, but the parents had left to get out to West County for their children. And so the question is, do you just let the private market dictate this?
Hmm.
Those who can leave the city will ultimately leave the city and get out
Yeah.
to West County,
Yeah.
and the government shouldn't play a role in this. It's there is movement out.
There's
We can
movement
see
out,
it in
and
the
I think in
city.
terms of domestic migration, to get parents to move in, you can go on our northern border, Iowa, uh, the state pays for private school tuition. Oklahoma to the south, state pays for private school tuition. Kansas, you can go to any public school in the state. It's 100% open enrollment. I think we're just gonna Arkansas is one of the strongest for school choice, both public and private. I think we're gonna be surrounded by it, and we're just gonna have our arms folded across our chests and say, "We just don't know because Parkway doesn't want all those kids coming, or Rockwood doesn't want all those kids coming." It's like, okay, well, parents are simply gonna move across the border to a state where they can pick any public or any private school. Because I've talked anecdotally to some parents who have reached out to say, "I'm thinking about moving to the region. Is it true I can't pick a school?" And I'm like, "It is true you cannot pick a school." And then I think they're like, "Forget it. I'm not going to make this big decision on where to buy a house and that'll be that. And I have different kids and I don't even know if it's going to be right for all the kids I have." So we're going to be, I think, if we don't do things that are family friendly, like there's a million surveys that parents want this. If we don't do that, if we don't get crime under control in some way, or a 911 system or something, so that when you call, somebody responds. That was
Yeah.
always my problem. We'd call, no one responded. If we don't get that under control, I think it's so interesting that we're going to be. What you said about how St. Louis will become this example for the nation of what a dying city looks like.
We have three examples today: Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and St. Louis.
Wow.
Tampa is kind of unique because it is a destination state for retirees. The Wall Street Journal has an article today on Cleveland,
Wow.
the renaissance of downtown Cleveland.
What about,
And
Detroit? No?
well, Detroit too, the renaissance.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
So St. Louis has we haven't figured out our renaissance yet.
And to be honest with you, I think it will be hard because, and I'm not pro anything, but I find this whole debate about the city county, whatever it is,
Yeah, yeah.
interesting. I'm not from here, so I don't have this history of growing up here. But I think objectively, I look at the budget of St. Louis City, and you look at the budget of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a little bit bigger. It's got 25,000 more people, but their budget is significantly smaller than St. Louis City's budget.
Yeah,
And part of me is wondering, like, because the city is a city and a county,
yeah.
it doesn't have enough people, enough revenue to operate as a city and a county. And this is what's helping Pittsburgh out. This is what's helping Cleveland out
Mhm.
because that county revenue is spread among more taxpayers. Where in St. Louis City, the county functions are spread among this dwindling tax base.
Yeah,
Um, and so there is something to this that the city probably cannot be a county anymore.
yeah.
There's just too few taxpayers to be a city to provide city services and county services. Um, I looked at these budgets and I'm like, oh my gosh, why is St. Louis budget so much more? And we're talking not a little bit more,
A lot more.
a lot more than Pittsburgh's budget. Um, and Pittsburgh's having trouble,
Sure, sure.
right? And so I don't see the long-term fiscal um, thing turning around for the city because it's got to provide all of these services,
Yeah.
and the tax base is going to get. We hope it'll reach a peak, but it's the next 3 years are probably going to see population loss in this city. Um, and again, the numbers this came out in March. We'll get the numbers in May. It'll probably lead the country again in population decline for large cities. Um,
Are we still top 20 cities?
we're number one. Last year,
Oh,
St. Louis City
number
was number
1 in
one.
population decline, but what about in population?
Um, we're declining.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so we're not there yet. So we're very close though. We're very close to entering that list. Yeah, if we go back to 2020, we're smaller than we were in 2020. Um, the only reason we're not number one in decline is because we had so many immigrants. We didn't have I mean, we had a lot for St. Louis
Mhm.
that offset our domestic migration. But this will be an interesting 2030 census because it'll
Yeah.
be the first time that the region will go into a census with more people dying than babies born.
Oh.
And we've always had pretty big numbers. We've always had, well, in the last census, we had about 75,000 natural growth.
Mm.
We're looking at about 25 to 30,000 natural decline going into a
Wow.
census without any domestic migration. So,
Hmm.
right, but I tell people that this story is just starting. We have 75 years, 74 years of the century left. I'm just trying to get people to move from the mindset that we're not 2010. This
Yeah.
is not 2010 St. Louis.
Yeah.
You don't have 36,000 births anymore. You have 27 and it's declining, one of the fastest declines in the country. And because of it, we're aging very fast. And so we have to shift. Well, the region has to make a choice
Hmm.
that we start to organize our economy around senior citizens There's lots of money to be made from senior citizens,
Absolutely.
but will never be viewed as Nashville or Austin as a place for young people.
No, that 64 quarter is just gonna be all retirement homes, like it is.
Retirement homes. I won't be talking about single family homes anymore. We'll be talking about senior housing.
Hallmark Garden.
We'll be
Yep.
talking about a workforce that's going to work with seniors
Yeah,
instead of a workforce for children.
right?
And so there is money to be made in that economy, right? I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. But again, we can look at other parts of the country where this transition has happened. Local government spending is being consumed by senior citizens, the
Yeah,
healthcare of senior citizens, the paratransit of seniors. Seniors will lose their ability to drive.
yeah,
That cost typically gets covered by the local governments.
yeah,
Um, and so you will not be providing buses for children.
right.
You'll be providing paratransit to get seniors to their doctors.
Yeah,
Churches will have to think about um, being accessible to seniors. I go to Church of Ascension, and they are not prepared.
they have steps.
They're not. I mean, they were the kind of prepared, but like at Easter, one of the masses, like 1/3 of this section was senior citizens that had wheelchair. Like the churches are simply not prepared for um, a parish that's going to be 50%. Of the population is
Elder.
going to be 70%, 70 years old and older.
That's crazy. Well,
Restaurants have to think
interesting
about
stuff. I hope that you'll come back and talk about this more. And certainly, I'm very interested in reading everything that you write, but about what St. Louis can do. We need to figure out a renaissance.
we got to get younger, and the kids are giving us a try.
Okay.
Coming to school, they're coming to WashU because they have hopes. We just have not responded in ways that we need to, and so I think a lot of companies are starting to recognize this. I I talked to the mayor and said, you need to be a more proactive voice
Yeah.
to this. But this is a regional. This is not a city
Yeah.
of St. Louis issue.
Right. Right.
This
Yeah.
is a St. Charles issue, a Jefferson County issue, a Chesterfield issue. This is most of the people live outside of St. Louis City,
Yeah.
and so this loss that the loss we're projecting um, is going to come from the suburbs, and that's what's happening in Pittsburgh. That's what's happening in Cleveland. 100% of their demographic loss is in the suburbs.
Oh, fascinating. Thank you so much for explaining it. I don't want to be depressed about it, but it's not super optimistic. But we'll find a silver lining.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Sandoval.